Oh, hey guys, don't mind me. I'm just out for my my little jog, my afternoon jog before our next tutorial video. Getting really lightheaded here. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna take a look at infinite scrolling effects, like what I'm showing off here, so we can have levels that go on forever and ever, instead of running out of horizontal or vertical space. So, oh man, I'm getting exhausted. Well, I can hover here and I'll show you what's going on. So what we've got here is a background and a floor that's actually moving horizontally to the right. And so what I was doing there in the intro was I was standing still. It looked like I was running to the side, but really what was happening was the entire background and frame of reference was moving to the right. So I'm going to tweak this little timer here to show you one of the things that we're going to talk about in this video to extend this concept a little bit, and that's where you can use signal strengths to even slow down the speed of this infinite scrolling. So here I can turn it down to 0 and make it stop, and I can let this timer run, and it'll show you that we can make the background speed up smoothly, which is a really nice effect, and we have the potential to do some really cool things here. Okay, so I'm going to pause this and we're going to clean up, and I'll come back to this in a minute. Hey guys, we're back here and we have cleaned up our level, and I have just put down here a simple piece of road. So this is a single piece of road, and I lined it up so that when I place them end to end it will look like one continuous piece. Okay, and I'll just show you what it's going to take in terms of our logic to make this infinite scroller work. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to place down is an anti-gravity tweaker, and then I'm just going to bump the dampening up to 10% because that's what worked for me. Okay, and then I'll use a material tweaker, and the only thing I'm using this for is to turn the sound down, because I'm going to be smashing bits of road together in a bit, and I don't want to be able to hear that. So you may choose to have that smashing noise, but I don't want it. Okay, and then I'll put down a gyroscope, and we'll bump all these settings up to the top because I don't want it rotating or tilting or anything. I want our road to remain perfectly flat, and to make the road move we do of course use a mover here. So I'll bump the mover speed up to 10, all the way up to 100% for acceleration and deceleration. Now I'll drop the deceleration down to 10. Okay, and then to make this emit forever and ever, I'll place down an emitter. Okay, so here's my emitter, and then I'll just use the live capture, which means that any edits that I make on that piece will show up in the emitter. And then I'll just place this down using that white matter as a guide. Okay, so if I unpause, we'll see that at default it does emit, and it goes off to the left or the right like it's supposed to, and I need to make it so it goes a little more frequent, so I'll drop that down to 0 and turn the lifetime to infinite and make the maximum number up to 10. Okay, so what's happening here is the game is trying to emit a new piece as soon as there is clear space, but you'll notice that it does it and it leaves a gap. There are ways that you can tweak it so the gap disappears, but I'm going to be speeding up and slowing down these pieces in a bit, and so I'm going to use an alternate solution to do that, to close the gap I mean. So what I did is I placed a piece of hologram and put an orange tag on it right at the beginning there, and then I'm going to use an impact sensor, and I'm going to tweak this impact sensor to match that tag settings. So orange, and then include touching, yes, I want that because we're dealing with hologram material. And then I'll just make a copy of my mover and speed it up to 30. Okay, and then I'll wire my impact sensor right up there, and you'll notice that the problem has indeed resolved itself here. So it starts with a gap, and then because it goes faster while it's touching that hologram, it speeds up and catches up with the previously emitted piece, eliminating the gap as desired. Okay, so basically we have an infinite scroll set up here. It's very basic, but it does in fact work. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how we can speed this up and slow it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a tag and wire a counter up to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this counter to create a percentage speed that I'm going to distribute through this tag here. So if I drop this counter down to 5, now it's got 5 out of 10, and it will spit out 50% signal through that tag. So I'll just bump it back up to 100, so we have our default settings there, and I'll create a tag sensor over here. Want to leave this one as green so it matches up with that tag over there, and I'll bump the detection range way up because our road pieces are going off quite a ways away from where that tag is. So I'll just go roughly 1,000 or so, a little over, and then I want to make sure I choose this output value to signal strength. So that's going to interpret the signal strength going through that tag, and it's going to convert it into this tag, or this circuit board here. And then I, of course, need to make my mover now set to speed scale. Okay, so now let's see what happens. I'm going to clear this out so we get rid of all these, and then start over with a fresh 10 because I've made edits. And then I'm going to drop my target, or my current count on my counter down. Then look what happens. Those emitted pieces, they still emit like they did before, and they still catch up and to close the gap, but they slow down depending on what signal strength is going through there. And we often call that an analog signal. So right now I have a 100% analog signal going through, which is what we set at default. And I could drop that down and it will slow it down. Okay, so we have the basics set up, but I don't have to stop there. I can make a copy of this entire logic, because it works perfectly fine, and copy it over to another piece of infinite scrolling section. Okay, so I set up a little cityscape here. It's kind of the leftovers from an LBP1 project that I had abandoned for now. I hope to come back to it later. But what I'm going to do is create a new emitter and set this one up to emit behind my road section there. So I capture this background. I can just select part of it and it'll get the whole thing. And then place this down one layer behind, and I'll move it over so it all emits on the left side here. Okay, so you'll notice it speeds up through that hologram material, and then once the first one goes through, it kind of matches up and everything works out smoothly. Okay, so you'll notice that the road and the background move together as one. And you might be asking, well, why didn't I just emit them together? That doesn't make any sense. I could just make one big piece and emit it. Well, if we do it that way, then we can't do what I'm about to do here, which is slow down the mover for the background piece. So if I slow this down to 8, and then I clear out my emitted parts, so because I've made edits, so I'm going to clear all these out, so max emitted down to 0, and then bump it back up to 5. Look at what's happening here. So now my background is moving slower than my foreground, the interactive layer, and it creates what's called parallax. An effective parallax creates an illusion of depth where there isn't one. So you'll notice those buildings, it looks like they're further back than they are because they're moving at a slower rate. It's kind of like when you drive in your car and the things that are close look like they're really whipping by, and things that are far away look like they're going slower. That's exactly what we're going to do here, and I'm going to add a third level with this little landscape piece here. It's nothing fancy, but I'll drop the speed of that down to 5, and then I'll need a third emitter to emit that in the back layer. Okay, so then I'll capture it like I did with the other pieces there. Get that all lined up, and then place it down appropriately in the third layer so that it can emit off to the left side and catch up with the other ones. Okay, so there it goes. The first one went zipping off, and then it slowed down once it cleared the hologram material. And you'll see that the effect we get is that that hill, that landscape, is way back behind the buildings, and it creates this nice effect when really they're right smack up against the back of the buildings. We're in the back thick layer for the buildings and the back thin layer for that landscape. Creates a really nice illusion effect. And Media Molecule has released this in their downloadable content, or this effect in their downloadable contents in Marvel and the Incredibles, and it's worked really well. But with LBP2, we can do this speed up and slow down stuff. So here I can turn this speed all the way down, and it'll stop and bump it up, and the whole set, all 3 layers, will speed up together. And they'll have their proportional speeds to create the parallax effect regardless of what setting I have there. So we've done some really interesting things here, and it creates this great parallax effect that I hope to use one day in a level, and I hope you guys are seeing the potential of what we can do here. Okay? So you can do this kind of thing with other things, not necessarily an infinite scrolling cityscape. You could do a survival challenge where it speeds up over time and so on and so forth. So we can do some really cool things. Ooh, and a weird glitch there. So hope you guys learned something. Take care and see you later.
Go on, get learning.